Hello. Um, Today I'll be making this recording, and it's about people pleasing. I haven't got a script or anything, so I'm just gonna roll with it and let's see how it works. Um, when I'm talking about people pleasing, I have made a realization of how different types of traumas trigger people pleasing and how the people pleasing will often re trigger your traumas. So, in my case, people pleasing came from an abandonment wound, which I've since healed from. And people pleasing is when you give of yourself for a specific reason or a specific motive. For example, with my abandonment, I had a fear of being abandoned, and not only that, the abandonment wound also triggered feelings of lack and of unworthiness of feeling love. So, the way this works is if you feel like you don't have it within yourself, the love that you need, the attention, or the care, you're going to start looking outside of you. And this is where people pleasing comes in because you're trying, in my case, I've tried to please others so I could fit in, so I could have a sense of belonging, so I could have a sense of partnership. And I attached all of those things that I've listed and probably more to being loved and to being cared for. The issue is when you give and you meet a new person and you are in that state of giving where you give because you're fearful of losing something or not having something, it just ends up getting in the way of you having what you want. So in my relationships in the past, I would very much give, and I would give from my own cup, and I wouldn't always refill my own cup. So I was always pouring into other people's cups and filling their cups, and my glass got empty. And when that glass got empty, I got into a very bad depression. And it was bad to the point where I was thinking, I need to be on medication at this point. The issue here is the lack of self worth in myself was the lack of self worth. It was the lack of knowing what filled my own cup. And I wasn't doing any of those things for myself. I was doing everything for other people because I just wanted to feel those feelings of being loved, accepted, and belonging. I wanted to be I wanted to be poured into the same way I poured into others. Now, that is fair, but when it comes from a place of wounding or a place of fear, it's almost like you're expecting others to help you. Whereas the people you meet while you're in that state of hurt and pain and being people pleasing out of hurt and pain, they have always known you for being overgiving, for being overcaring. So once you start shifting, it's very hard to understand because when I stopped when I started shifting, I stopped overgiving. I actually swung all the way back. I was at the overgiving side of the pendulum swing, and then I went back to not giving at all. And I didn't even give to myself at that time either. because I didn't know what I needed truly and what I wanted, you know. So I didn't know what to give myself and how to give myself that love and that care and that attention that I needed. Part of what helped with that was inner child work, parts work, internal family systems, and Gestalt therapy, two chair, which I've spoken about before. And it was about recognizing those parts in me, first of all, which means to recognize the pain, to recognize the experiences, to validate them because they were real. And even though these things happened at a young age for me, it's what I felt and what I understood with my understanding and my emotional language at the time, which was a bit restricted and limited. So that made it hard for me to understand as well what was going on. So it was a very confusing period. When I started to discover what I had to give to myself, and I'm still in that process. I'm still discovering what I need to do and what I have to do. But when I started that process, it started to free me in a way. And I started to see everything I was doing for others while I wasn't doing for myself. Now, this is where the paradoxical and tricky part comes in. Because at that point, I was still wounded. I was still trying to heal from abandonment and people pleasing. So that thought, when it comes up, when you notice that you're not doing what you need for yourself because you're doing too much for others, that instantly triggered my abandonment wounds, because that meant I had to let everyone and everything go and fully focus on myself. That means re-triggering the abandonment and turning the people pleasing into Lucas pleasing, into self pleasing or pleasuring, not in a sexual way. Even though when I was depressed, that was my main coping coping strategy. TMI, I don't care. Because it was the only thing that I thought would bring me fulfillment or pleasure in that moment. And there's no shame in that. But I have realized since that there's so much more that I can do for myself or even with myself, you know, taking myself out to solo dates, you know, which is pretty nerve-wracking at first. But there are steps you can take to make this journey easier on you. One of the main things I would say is self-compassion, okay? It's giving the amount of care to yourself that you would to a friend. Someone you really appreciate, somebody you really love. So you're giving that friend compassion. Imagine you're giving yourself that compassion. Another thing was to recognize shame and how that comes up for me, okay? It comes up in many ways, but there is a very common denominator. I will be posting a link in the description for a video about shame where he explains it beautifully. Because with shame comes fear of judgment, anxiety. These are all connected. And these were all also a part of restructuring myself and integrating myself and healing from the abandonment, the people pleasing, the overgiving. Yeah. Back to abandonment wounds and people pleasing. it's okay to give of yourself to others. It's okay to be there for others when they need you. The most important thing though is to prioritize yourself. And as a people pleaser, prioritizing myself was very hard because I spent the past 20 years, 24 years of my life basically giving. I wouldn't say 24 years, probably a bit less. 17, 18. That's a long time. It's very tiring. It's consuming. It's engulfing, you know. It's a silent trap. And it's a silent trap because, as I said before, you keep giving from yourself, and not everybody pours back in. And people get used to you overgiving and being very kind and gentle, um, but it's not always that that returns to you in the same level or in the way you need. So that leaves you feeling even more depleted, more tired, you know. And that's again where that expectation comes in, you know, the expectation of wanting to be treated right by someone. So what I did was I started doing many things at the time that I'm not necessarily proud of, you know, just to gain attention, to gain what I thought were positive points in in the book of life or in other people's books. And there used to be a lot of shame there because I did loads of things that morally, deep down, I didn't agree with. But I did all of it to gain attention. And that attention wasn't always good. You know, that attention wasn't always positive, but it was attention. It was me seeking to be seen. Yeah. So it's quite easy as you start to reflect on your journey of healing, wherever you are. Sorry, it can be quite difficult to reflect because it's hard to look at parts of you that you feel shameful of, you know, um, or let's exchange, let's use shameful and cringy interchangeably because in a state of abandonment wounds and people pleasing, or just people pleasing by itself, you are leaving yourself behind in the background to be a front, a mask, a face for others that you have in your life, new people, and new people that come into your life. So you start giving away parts of yourself and hiding those parts and hiding those needs, those wants, those desires, things that deep in your core you know will bring you a sense of happiness, a sense of fulfillment, a sense of self care or self love. And you start doing things for others. And this is where you start to lose yourself. You don't know who you are, you don't know what you want, because your life is everybody else's lives together. And I remember getting into activities when I was younger. I got into activities and things that either were too expensive for me or that I didn't really enjoy. Um, and I made decisions that weren't aligned with who I am at the time and where I am now, where I'm going, and who I wanted to be at the time. And that distance was very painful because I kept giving, giving, giving. And not many people poured back into me into the way I needed and desired. But at the time, my needs and desires were all distorted because I was looking at life from a different lens. I was looking at life from a lens of lack, of pain, of sadness, and unprocessed grief. So people have this image of me, or had this image of me. And yes, the things that I ended up doing for people pleasing weren't always the nicest things. There was this one time I was in my school, um, and this was probably year six, year five. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But there was this guy who joined, a classmate of mine joined for a few years. His name was Ian, and I'm not going to say his last name, but his first name was Ian, and he saw something in me. I think he saw that people pleasing nature, and he decided to take advantage of that. Looking back on it now and reflecting on, the word tones and facial expressions, and I know it's not fair to judge a situation based off memory because the memory warps with time, and the more you think of it, it warps. Unless you're pretty clear, unless it's a very clear memory. But this guy, Ian, suggested that I stole one of my favorite teachers, by the way. He suggested that I stole his laser pointer. And it was the first time in my life I saw a laser or a laser pointer, in class especially. And I was like, oh, that's fucking cool. Yeah, maybe maybe I'm going to get brownie points in this guy's book if I do what he says. And I did it. I stole it. But it was very short lived. It's like the universe or God or whoever, whatever you want to call it, was ready to serve some instant hot karma. And right on the same day after the lunch break, after I'd stolen it, the teacher was asking where it was, and nobody said anything. Nobody said anything. So he's getting very angry. Not very angry, but he's definitely unhappy that someone took his laser pointer. And by that point, I'm shitting my pants. I'm like, why the fuck did I do this? I shouldn't have done this. Why, why, why did I put myself in this terrible, shitty situation? Was it worth it? No, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it because I was the son of a teacher. Almost sounds like a swear. The son of a teacher. Um, I was at that school, very expensive school, private. Um, but I was there basically for free. I just had to pay for lunch and my clothes, my school clothes. And my mom's paycheck was almost enough to cover the expenses for the year and to pay for the household bills. It was just enough. Um, to the point that she had to do supplementary lessons as a teacher, private classes as a teacher outside to supplement our lives, to give me and my sister the best quality of life. So in this school full of rich kids, there are these students, i.e., myself and my sister at the time. We were sons of the teacher, so we had to to be upstanding and have a very specific behavior code, because we, by proxy, we were representing Saint Nicholas. There you go, Saint Nicholas. We were representing the school. Um, Yeah. So we always had to be upstanding and kind, and if I could and wanted to, I couldn't punch or beat the shit out of anyone. So it was very emasculating for me to be in that role. And I think people knew that, people noticed that, and that was one of the reasons why I was very bullied. And when I say this, an incident comes to mind where somebody, I'm not entirely sure who, because I know, I feel like I know who it is, but the memory is blocked. Um, I'm not going to say their name just in case it isn't, but we were changing in the changing rooms, and I've got hit with a belt on my back. Um, you know, Normal people don't do that kind of stuff. But then again, I'm saying this from a place of hurt still, because I don't understand the conditions that led someone to do that to me, to do that to someone who is actually overgiving and trying to be nice. But, anyways, in trying to be nice, I did things I felt very shameful for a long time, like stealing that freaking laser pointer, you know. So, going back to the laser pointer story, I had this whole ethical code to stand for that was unspoken of because my mom was a teacher, and by proxy, I represented the school as well. Um, I was going through these wounds of people pleasing and wanting to be accepted, wanting to be found nice and cool and loved, and. So I did it. And the universe or God or whoever, Vishnu, Allah, whatever you believe in, decided to serve instant karma and called it out right after it happened, basically. And it was a very embarrassing moment because I had to give it back. And it was double embarrassing because it was the teacher's son, the poor guy, out of all of the millionaire and very rich families in that school, who had stolen the laser pointer. I gave it back. I felt extremely guilty, um, and the shame around that, the shame. Fuck me. That was yeah. That was very hard to deal with and to come to terms with. And I didn't do that for a long time. Probably half a decade to a decade, maybe more. I would say probably more than a decade, actually. Yeah. And that shame kept dormant there. I thought that if I pushed it to the side, if I suppressed it, if I didn't look at it, that it would go away. But it didn't go away. It just kept compounding. And this is just one example of the things that I would do to be loved and accepted. A lot of things would include me making fun of myself, the use of self deprecating jokes. Um, Self deprecating jokes are fine, but it depends where you're at mentally. Because if you're picking on yourself and you're using your own judgments and your own shame to judge yourself, then you're just going to reinforce the shame. You're going to reinforce those beliefs. You're going to reinforce the need for affection. So as I didn't look at it, I just pushed it to the side and it grew and grew and grew alongside all of the other things I've done and said that betrayed me, that betrayed my own values, my own interests, my own needs, my own desires. And I keep saying needs and desires, but I didn't have the language at the time or the courage to communicate what my needs were. I didn't understand what my needs were because I didn't have the language to know what it was. And this is why developing emotional, I was going to say emotional intelligence. Is that right? I guess it's right. Emotional intelligence, which is to to be able to sit with your feelings, to process things from both a rational and an emotional standpoint. Okay. for me, I've used a lot of rationality in the past, which, you know, using this process that I used, it was easier for me. I'm not saying it's easy for everybody, and everybody is different and has their own ways of seeing life and processing things. But the way I started looking at it was looking at things objectively, and emotions would still come up, but I would focus on the objective reality of things. Just like, just as me explaining the story of stealing the laser pointer, I would look at it objectively. And feelings would come up. Feelings do still come up, but not to the same extent, because the more you sit with those feelings, the more you get used to them. And the more you get used to them, the more you understand them. And as you do this, this is the different parts of you coming back together and joining parts that you had left to the side. This is why internal family systems, inner parts work was very meaningful and important for me. I lost my train of thought. I forgot what I was talking about. It's okay, it happens. Digressions are normal on this channel. I'm starting to feel a sense of anxiousness because it's gone quiet for too long. But just naming that feeling made the anxiety go away. There's still a bit of nervousness there, hence the laugh, but also the irony of looking and naming it. Yes, I remembered. So by naming the feeling, it brought me back to where I was at, because I was basically talking about that, was recognizing the different parts of yourself, right? Um, and recognizing the aspects of shame and guilt and judgment. Shame is nothing more than, um, well, it's a big thing. I'm just condensing it down very much. But shame is all of your self judgment, basically. It's all those introjected values, all of those values that get put onto you by society, your family, your school, your friends, your experiences in life, and how you perceive them. Okay. And that's the thing. It's perception, isn't it? There's a video I posted on this channel that talks about the different ways you can perceive the same thing, and that there's one true reality, but people are going to see that one reality in different ways. I would suggest you watch that because it gives a visual understanding. But the idea is that there is one reality, and the way I used to see that reality came from a place of hurt. It came from, okay, yeah, this is a good analogy. This is a good analogy, okay? So imagine you have a map, okay? This is your map. You have a map that has all places, here, there, everywhere, you know, there you go. But this map is not working with the territory you're at. So you're using this map, which is the way you see the world. It's the way you interact with the world. But you don't get the results back that you're expecting or that you need. That's because your map is wrong. It's not aligned. It's not aligned with reality. Let's say this is the reality. And this is your map. Your map, reality. If you're going to try and overlay these do not look the same. These do not look the same. Even the pages on this map are bent. This is just a magazine, but for the purpose of an explanation, even the pages inside are bent. Something not wrong, but not quite right with this. No comment on the images. This is purposely just for illustration purposes. But it's like walking up a mountain with the wrong map. And you're like, oh, I thought it says, my map says that this is a path. When in reality, it could be a path, but it's got loads of spikes and brambles and bushes on it. And you can choose to go down that path. It won't be easy. It will spike you. It's going to whip back at you, you know, whatever. And you're just going to suffer through life. And that's what I'm saying. The expectations and desires that I had at the time to be loved and accepted were wrong because I was looking outside of myself. But I still didn't know. I didn't have the instruction that I had to look for that within. I had to satisfy myself. I had to be in alignment with my own needs, desires, with my own objectives, my own morals, my own goals. Okay? So many things that I had to be in alignment with that I wasn't. And I couldn't find the language to communicate it. I couldn't find the language to understand it. So after a lot of struggling and trying to fix myself, wrong language, but you get the sense. So trying to heal myself. Throughout this whole path, I eventually got to studying therapy because I thought, you know, I did the whole test, vocational test. You know, if you don't know what you want to do in life or what you're good at, do a vocational test. My very first answer on the vocational test at the top was a therapist. And when I did it at the age of what? 17? 18 maybe? When I did it at that age, I saw a therapist and psychologist, and then business owner, get graphics designer. I saw the whole list. I don't know if that was the order specifically, but therapist and psychologist were the top two. And I was like, there's no flipping way I'm going to do that. I'm too broken and I'm too mangled up emotionally and mentally. And I had that awareness, at least at the time. And now in my present life, I'm like, why the fuck did I not do that before? Because if you're studying therapy to become a therapist, you're inadvertently going to learn all of the tools, all of the applications, all of the new words to communicate emotion and to understand emotion. You're going to learn how to be more emotionally intelligent and emotionally aware. And you can apply all of those tools to yourself to help yourself heal, to help yourself get out of pain, out of emotional and mental pain. I didn't know why I didn't do that at the time. I guess I was still very much hurting, and the things were just still compounding there. I was still pretty resilient because I was just suppressing everything. I was just ignoring and suppressing everything. Um, and then came the time where I was using copious amounts of psychedelics and psychoactive substances just to numb the pain. And that was even more suppression, but that was when I started really using drugs, when the funnel started getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and there was less of an escape for me, to the point where I was addicted to ketamine for a while. Um, and then after I'd realized, after my friend at the time told me, man, I think you're addicted to ketamine, that just triggered a lot of stuff that I didn't want happening in my life. And boom, 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 things started to fall into place, but in a very painful way, because falling into place meant widening that gap and allowing for everything that was suppressed to start coming up. All of this shame, all of this guilt, all of this pain, all of the loneliness, all of the lack of love from others and self love, and all of these unresolved feelings and thoughts and experiences just start bubbling up. Um, so I went through a bit of a bumpy road before joining the course, the therapy course. Um, but as soon as I joined it, I could tell that there was a lot of work to be done. There was a lot of work to be done because you're sitting in class, you're going, oh, interesting, interesting. Wait, that kind of sounds like my life, or that kind of sounds like that experience that I've had. And then you're like, oh shit, I'm XYZ attachment style. Just X or Y or whatever, because you can have mixed attachment styles. And you're like, oh wow, it's not only my attachment styles, but it's my needs for being seen and understood. Oh my god, I am not being congruent, you know. And the examples and case studies that they give you in class, and you're just going, oh wow, I went through something similar. Wow. So it's mind blowing, and you start to see the things that are in you that you haven't seen before. So the therapy course, was a massive mirror. It was like staring into a massive mirror where all of my insecurities and fears and projections about myself and the world, everything was on display. And that is absolutely triggering. That is absolutely triggering. It's not easy, but at least in the therapy course, you learn all of the skills. You learn the interventions, the homework. You learn the knowledge behind it, and you also learn how to apply it onto others, and by proxy onto yourself, and vice versa, onto yourself and by proxy onto others. You can only know others to the depth that you know yourself. So, a good point to that is when I explained about the being hit with the belt and the changing room and everyone laughing. So, a great sense of shame and judgment for just being myself, getting changed and getting hit by a belt on my back. Yeah, this is nervous itchiness. It's not nervous itchiness. Yes, it's a bit of nervousness of talking about this publicly. Not because it hurts, but because there's still an element of shame there, which I'm working through. But a good example to what I'd said before was, you can only know yourself to the depths. You can only know others to the depths that you know yourself. When I was giving the example of being hit by the belt, I said, I don't know what the guy was going through or what he had gone through in his life that would justify him being, okay, I'm going to hit him with the belt. Even if he did it out of his own choice, or if someone was like, hey, you should do this and that, and he did it. Because I've been through the experience with the laser, I'm like, if he was told, then what was the guy's process? Was he also trying to fit in to the group? And he did that to me because he thought he was going to be accepted? Maybe. I don't know. Or maybe he's been through another experience that normalizes that kind of behavior. I don't know. But I'm offering him the compassion that I've offered myself in the past. The same compassion that has allowed me to heal and to start talking about these experiences openly. I've started offering others that same compassion. Now, does that mean if the person came to me and apologized, we would be best buds? I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. I have changed a lot since people from my past last saw me. And I don't know. I think about people from my past sometimes, and I wonder if they are the same or not. And there is no judgment if they are or if they aren't, for better or for worse. There is no judgment at all. But what is scary is the lack of change, the lack of growth. And every opportunity we're presented in life is an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity for change. Every time we feel triggered by someone or something, we should be looking at why we have that button that presses that we get triggered. Not getting mad at the person for triggering us. But I think that's a talk for another day. So people pleasing is very difficult to work with because people pleasing is usually a consequence of something that is underneath. So it's okay for you to identify that you are a people pleaser, but the next step is, why am I a people pleaser? Okay? And it might not be just one answer to that why question. It might be 2, 3, or more. Whatever the amount is, it doesn't matter. It matters. It matters for your healing. But it doesn't matter because you will become more knowledgeable of yourself. Identifying all of those whys. If you're going to do this, make sure that you have a strong support group around you. Make sure you have people who will listen, family, friends who won't be burdened by you, so you don't feel that sense of burdening people or whatever other sense. I am an advocate for therapy. So if you feel like you don't have anybody to talk to, go to a therapist. Now, I understand therapy is very mixed in opinions and reviews. People's experiences are vast and varied. Some therapists are out there because of the title, or because they want to fulfill a need within them. Not all, some. And some therapists just don't care, or that's the sense that people get. Clients get the sense that some therapists do not care. And that could be the therapist, but that could also be the type of therapy you're going after or the type of therapy you're looking for, okay? So if you're looking for a therapist, research the different types. I'm talking of Gestalt, internal family systems, okay? These are different modalities. These usually fall under the umbrella of positive psychology or psychotherapy or humanism. There's also CBT, which is good at addressing thoughts, patterns, and behaviors. So look into the different types of therapy and the different types of psychological theory that underpins that. And you'll see one is more talking, you talk more. The other is more of a back and forth and a bouncing, or maybe a resistance or a mirroring. And finding the right therapist isn't always easy. Building the right amount of therapeutic relationship isn't always as fast. But once you find the right therapist, you will know. And it's okay for at different points in your journey to want different types of therapists as well. That's a whole other video in and of itself. Basically, what I'm trying to say with this video is you can integrate your parts, different parts of yourself. You can love yourself, and you can recover from people pleasing. It will be uncomfortable because you'll go from people pleasing to pleasing nobody at all. And that in itself might still trigger people pleasing beliefs, thoughts, experiences, memories. So just be easy on yourself. Just take it easy. But if it's something that you want to do, you need to do the work. And doing the work is applying what you know, applying what you've learned. If you have a faith, a belief, a religion, it is also very helpful. Okay? It is also very helpful because it gives you moral and ethical guidelines that you feel comfortable and that are aligned with you. And this doesn't have to be religion or religion per se. It can be spirituality. It could be, spiritism, I would say, is the religion of spirituality. But any way you approach this, even Buddhism, Taoism, ways of being, Stoicism, whatever ism, whatever belief that you have, can also be very helpful and supportive. Especially if your people pleasing comes from abandonment, if it comes from a place of feeling alone or lonely, two different words. It helps. It helps to heal. But it's not always easy, and healing from these things is not for everybody because it is difficult. It is difficult. For some more and for others less. But it's something that you have to commit to. Because once you start down that path, it's very hard to go back. I would say it's hard to go back because it's like you shining a light onto the darkest parts of yourself. And how are you going to unsee what you've seen? How are you going to unsee or unlearn what you've learned about yourself, about who you are at your core? It's not easy. But I don't say this to scare people. I say this to encourage you, because the more you heal, the more you're taking off this dry, crusty, muddy thing involving your body. And the more it peels out, it's like peeling this sticky mud that's pulling your arm hairs. And it's painful and it's uncomfortable. But you start taking these layers off of yourself, and you start to feel more, and you start to express yourself more in a way that is aligned with who you want to be, aligned with your objectives and your goals. And that is compounding. So the more you do that, the more you want to do it, because it's liberating, it's freeing. It's freeing. So, for anybody going through therapy, anybody healing or starting the journey of healing, especially if abandonment wounds and people pleasing are involved, because it's the scope of this video, I wish you good luck and also congratulations. Congratulations. It's not easy. Some parts will be very terrible, but or not. It's your healing journey. Mine felt like it at times, very much. But give yourself that compassion, give yourself that love. Listen to yourself, reflect, make sure you're supported by friends, family, loved ones. Make sure you're supported by a therapist. Make sure you have someone to decompress and talk to, a pastor or a spiritual guide or a shaman, Schumann resonance, Schumann, shaman. Make sure you have someone to talk to if you need to, because you're not alone in your healing journey, even though it's lonely. It's lonely because you have to go through the journey yourself. Nobody can do the work for you. You have to do the work. It feels lonely, but you're not alone. There are other people that have been where you are or that haven't been where you are yet, or that will get to where you are, and there's people who have been where you are and have got to the other side. There's people everywhere on the healing journey spectrum. Okay, wherever you are, give yourself love, give yourself compassion, take it easy, but don't stop. And okay, don't take this too literally. Stop, take breaks. Okay, because in these breaks you will allow that knowledge to integrate, and you can start applying that knowledge into real life. Okay, it's a multi-layer process. It's not necessarily easy. I might make videos describing each part of the process. I don't know. It is very interesting though. My mouth is dry. I would love some tea. The sun is coming out, which is a rarity in England. It's not a rarity. It's my day to day for today. That was a tongue twister. So I'm heading off. Um, I was going to apologize for the long pauses, but ah. I hope you have a great day or night whenever you're watching, if you're watching. And if you're not watching, for whoever isn't watching, I also wish you a great day. Um, and it's my time. My time has come to go. Thank you.